2, 1, go.
Welcome back!
Welcome back to not the pilot of This Is Not a Solicitation.
This is not a solicitation.
Oh, thank God. Happy to be back. Let's just tell you a little bit again if you don't remember what we are here for. I'm Rebecca.
I'm Catherine.
And we are here today. If you didn't catch our last episode, which you should go back to the pilot because it took a lot of effort and a lot of time to get there, we are here today to remind you that we are two realtors who love what we do. And our mission is simply to remind the world and consumers, agents alike. We're mostly talking to agents here, but consumers for sure as well. We feel that agents have a bad reputation in the business, and we also feel that it's on us to change that. And we're really passionate about doing so.
Yeah. The cool thing about this podcast is that this is not a solicitation, which means that when we're having these discussions, it is expressly not with the intention of gathering business. So we are real estate agents. Sometimes we may talk about topics outside of our scope. Hopefully we'll involve people who can maybe speak with a little bit more professionalism in those scenarios. Oh, your cat just walked in.
Oh, I knew you were going to do this. You pain in my ass.
Cute girl. I lost my train of thought.
We were just talking about what we are doing and what we're here for.
So we are going to involve other people at times, but yeah, the main thing is that this is a dialogue, like you said, about like what we're seeing in our industry, how we're improving in our craft, and just holding each other accountable to how good of a job you can do as a realtor and how many lives you can change when you're doing a good job.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up the slideshow right now because there are some things that we are going to talk about today, but the first thing we want to do is read you guys some stats that we found incredibly interesting at our last team meeting. Shout out to Keller Williams, Greenville Central. So, first things first, what are we talking about today?
So our topic today is we're talking about the biggest reasons that we see that that people dislike their agent, basically.
Yeah, or fire their agent, or really what we hear a lot of the time when we chat with our clients, we ask them that question, have you worked with a realtor before? How did that go? And I would say 90% of the time, they're like, it was okay, or it was terrible.
Yeah.
It's very rare that they say it was great, otherwise
it's neutral to bad.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be there, honestly, because if it was, then they would have called their agent in the first place. So,
for sure.
Some stats for you off the top, and we promise that we're not just going to read stats to you today, so if you feel like you're going to tune out because you're a buyer or seller and you're not a realtor, I encourage you to stick around. One of the most interesting stats that we had read or had learned was, and this is the NAR specifically polled buyers, you're so annoying, buyers and sellers, and what they said that 76% of people actually feel that when you buy a home, you should definitely have someone who represents you during the process. Mm-hmm. And then the other stat was, and this is, we can certainly attest to this, 91% of responders actually feel that it's extremely stressful to navigate the home buying and home selling process without a real estate agent or broker. So agents, if you're listening, keep that in mind today because they need you. It's just too important to mess it up and to do it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I think it, honestly, part of what gives me chills, and we talked about this, is like, even though I would still argue that most people have this neutral to bad connotation around the idea of a realtor, indisputably they still see them as important.
Yeah.
Like, guys, to me that just speaks
that's
volumes.
huge.
You know what I mean?
Like, I got chills.
Yeah, like we're still getting hired, and these people really aren't expecting a whole lot from us, is what we're saying.
For sure.
And I don't know, the way I'm wired, I see that as like a big opportunity to blow people away.
Same. Dazzle them.
Yeah, that's literally though, like to dazzle them, to just make them aware of like, up that game, up that expectation that you have of yourself at work, preach, but also just up the expectation that you have for service providers. And that's what we're going to get into today, is some ways that if you're a consumer, you can totally up your expectations, maybe go into conversations about real estate with feeling a little bit more confidence, but mostly we are talking to agents and maybe to younger versions of ourselves. Once again, the goal is not to like
lecture
and
make you feel like we're just sitting here like this is what you need to do.
No, because like I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm gonna mess this up 500 more times in my career. Like I just am, but I'm getting better. So I hope that the conversations that we have today, you can take something away from them.
Yeah.
There is one big bad obvious reason that people don't get along with their agent. Rebecca, you want to take us away, get us into the conversation?
Yeah, so we have 4 points here that we feel, and it's not just our feelings, we actually did some research on this, and these are the top 4 things that the first one is kind of what we've deduced, or is that deduced? Deduced. I don't like that word. Okay. What we've deduced as the way to kind of combat this, but the other three are actually that we've researched what consumers, buyers and sellers are saying is the reason they fired, did not like, or just didn't want to work with this person. You need to get out of here, okay? You're being distracted. You have to be a cat person if you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, the cat stays.
We like dogs, but we love cats.
Yeah, true.
Just kidding, we love Ginny.
That's my
So, number one, the ability to run the appointment. Agents cannot run the appointment. And what we mean by that is when you are sitting with your buyer or seller, and honestly, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say even so the seller, because they have a commodity, if you will, to sell, and anyone can come in and take that. It is so important to have a process. And I am not the process queen. I can follow something when I believe in it. Catherine's the process queen. I usually go rogue, but I recognize the importance of the parts of the process that I can't forget, like going through a CMA, all these things. And I'm going to stop because I will go too far, but let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think we talked about this kind of its whole own episode, the idea of running a listing appointment, a buyer consultation, whatever. But I think the main point that I really, really wanted to drive home is before we start talking about things that happened during the transaction, let's zoom out a moment and think back to a really great mentor of mine once said, we wake up as realtors every day unemployed until somebody decides to hire us. So like when you're in that interview, when you're in your audition, however you want to think about it, that's your first opportunity to create value and showcase a reason to be hired. And I would argue most of the time, agents don't take full advantage of that.
Right.
I'm a chatty person. A way that I didn't take full advantage of listing appointments when I first got into the business was I would talk these poor people to death because I was like, funny. I want you to know that I care. I want to know where you went to high school because I want to know you before I start to try to sell your biggest asset. But the problem with that is it's tiring. So,
I would be fatigued.
It's so exhausting. There's a really wonderful book that helped me with that. It's called Spin Selling. But the premise of the book is it's a way to design your questions, form really good, impactful questions so that you can still earn connection with people, but do it in a faster approach. And the book makes the point that most agents, most business people, salespeople only get to S out of SPIN. So anyway, like,
what does SPIN stand for?
SPIN is situational, problem, implication, need, payoff. Again, a whole episode in itself. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you're not able to articulate your value, if you're not able to ask relevant questions, important questions, leave the fluff out, frankly, if you're not asking any questions...
Oh yeah, I'm scared.
I'm going to insert some kind of noise right there, like, whoa. Remember in That's So Raven? When the crowd in the background would be like, whoa. Yeah, that's not an option.
Cool.
That, I would say, is your biggest downfall, because most agents rush to the did you set expectations question in that appointment. You probably won't get that far if you exhaust them.
100%.
So if you don't know...
Sorry, go ahead.
If you don't know how to run an appointment, you're going to lose them, is my only point. So
100%. And I'm on the flip side, because I'm too transactional sometimes. So I need to remember, and it's not that I don't care, I just feel that my job is to get the job done. So I can't have any fluff, but people enjoy to have conversation and connection, and I recognize that. And it's not that I don't, it's just, once again, my operating style, and when I'm in work mode, all of that goes away. So I actually have to remind myself to slow down and ask those really specific questions and make sure that I'm making them feel comfortable and confident, because I care about their personal situation. Like, hey, like, where did you go to high school? Like, that could really open up a door for them to feel that much more comfortable. And it's important, because what we want is for them to not only have a good experience, but to be their realtor forever and to have referrals from their friends and family, because we will take care of them. So if you are like me, you definitely need to do better and ask more questions. And if you're like Catherine, you definitely need to slow down and not ask so many questions. Yeah, sure. And not just be so like, like, I want to know about your mom's cousin's best friend kind of thing. Because like you said, I mean, it could be great for some people, but you can get fatigued, because with running that appointment, it's not just about asking the questions and conversations. You need to have the data to back up what you're saying. You need to have an entire, and again, we can make a whole episode on this, but an entire way to run that appointment so that every single person is able to sit there and say, okay, this is what my realtor's doing to get my house ready to go on the market, or this is what my realtor's doing to get me ready to purchase a home. Yeah. And if you left the table that day without them knowing next steps and where the end goal is, you totally failed.
Game over.
You failed.
Yeah, like before we went into like the main big three, I just thought that was really important that you remember the stage you're given from the jump to set expectations is super important. Obviously, at the end of that appointment, like we said, setting expectations is such a buzzword in our industry, but it really is because like we have the foresight, right? Like we know what's going to happen next, and these people are begging us, our consumers are literally begging us, hey, just keep me one step ahead. I just want to know what's going to happen next. Which bleeds into, of course, our second point.
Communication. The number one reason people fire, do not like, or will never talk to again their realtor is lack of communication, which is so crazy and sad because it's so easy to fix. But I think that a lot of the time, the reasons agents do that is because they don't know what to say.
Yeah.
They just don't know what they're supposed to say. So I think a really great way that we've developed like a cadence in our business personally is we have like hey, I'm going to call you every Monday and check in with you on this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to touch base with you after every showing. I'm going to set this up after every appointment, every house we go see.
Yeah.
We're just really, we try and be really aware of those things because I never want to be the agent that got let go because I didn't communicate. Like that embarrasses me to no end.
And I think here's the thing with communication. It doesn't there is no right answer, if that makes sense. We have both had clients, I'm sure you've had clients that ask you to bend from your normal communication. I can think of times where I've had clients who just don't really want to talk with me in depth, about next steps right before it happens. For example, before writing an offer. They're so gung-ho to write the offer. That makes me nervous because I really need to make sure that they know what's going on. My fiduciary kicks in and they get all weird. But sometimes I have to be able to bend and be concise and understand what's important to those people.
Yeah.
So my point, sorry, I just kind of lost my train of thought on that.
No,
but
okay.
The point I'm trying to make here is whatever you and the client decide on, whatever you can actually commit to in terms of communication, that needs to happen.
I think also, you bring up a really good point, whatever you can commit to. Sometimes there's nothing that's happened, then you've committed to giving them these updates and nothing's happened. And what do you do when nothing's happened?
Send them a no update.
Yeah, it's the best thing in the world. Hey, I don't have any update for you right now, and I really want you to know that. I'm still doing X, Y, and Z in the background to get your household, to find you a new house. But the worst thing you can do is assume that they're good because you haven't reached out. That is insane because most people are not the aggressive or assertive type. They're not going to reach out to they hired us to do it. So why would they have to reach out to us and be like, hey, are you doing your job? Are you going to give me any information?
Yeah.
It's on us to be able to be like, hey, I don't have any updates for you this week. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I think we should do next. And you wrote down a note about reaction time versus,
I love that one. So I really do pride myself on my response time. I know you do too, but a really good challenge that I was issued at one point in my career was, how often are your clients calling you versus you calling them proactively? The point is, the point this person made is that if your client is calling you, you've waited too long.
Yeah.
Now, obviously there are exceptions to that, right? If they just need a quick something, or if they wanted to let you quickly know, hey, there's fresh flowers on the counter, by the way, blah, blah, blah. That's different. But if your client is calling you for feedback, or, hey, I just wanted to know what's going on or what you're up to today to sell my house, that is such a gut punch.
I'm embarrassed just hearing that.
Yeah, but we've all been there.
Sure,
Even if it's just been a moment where for whatever reason communication wasn't enough, it's not about the fact that it happened. It's okay, how do you adjust from there? How do you correct that? Maybe what you guys committed to isn't enough.
Right.
And I'm a freak, so I over communicate everything to a point. So when I do pick up on that, I'll just ask.
Yeah.
Let's be like, Rebecca, we agreed to weekly check-ins and I'm feeling you call a little bit more and I want to give you a lot of confidence, so how about we up this to twice a week?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It has to be fluid. You just bought a house, and I'm going to call you out. You turned into a wreck at the end of it.
Bro, it was the worst experience of my life. So, it was horrible. And I represented myself and my husband, and we did, I knew everything that was going on, but I'm sorry, the lender was horrible, and he didn't. And I had to, and you probably are asking yourself, well, Rebecca, don't you have a lender in your back pocket? Absolutely, but if you know anything about buying a home in this market, if you're purchasing new construction and you go with the lender that works with the builder, you typically get a way better rate. And I'm talking almost 2%, 2.5% better than what market was at that point. And it was the worst experience. And I don't mean to shit all over this person, but there were no expectations set. I was calling him every single day, and I think I might have like lost a year off my life. It was so bad because I'm so used to what we work with and the people we work with.
Well, and not just that, but we said it at the time. You were panicking, and you were even saying that to them, saying, "Hey, I know I'm probably gonna." I
said, "I'm gonna have a heart attack."
Like you did,
legit.
I'm gonna have a heart attack if blah 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 blah, and like that is such a wake up call as a service provider to be like.
Dude, if my client said that to me, I would have passed out on the floor and been like, okay.
Yeah, because maybe you can't give them what they want. Like, he was never going to be able to give you the absolutely green light, let's close tonight.
Right.
Like, from
of course, yes.
Right? So he was never going to give you what you wanted.
Right. But all I would have needed to hear
nothing.
was, hey, I hear you, I'm doing what I need to do, and I will give you the green light when I have it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I have it, you're going to know, and as soon as we're one step closer, you're going to know. Like, I need to
That's
know.
what you want. And honestly, I would probably want the communication to be different as well. But the point is, when you're in a transaction with somebody, and especially if you've had a consultation up front, then you probably know them a little bit enough to kind of figure out how they like to be communicated with. Mm-hmm. Communication, what's the golden rule?
I don't know. Why are you testing me on the spot right now?
It's so fun.
Don't treat anyone the way you're not supposed to. You don't. I don't know.
That's it, folks.
What's the golden rule?
The golden rule is that you should treat everybody the way that you want to be treated.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But the platinum rule...
Treat everyone nicely. I don't know how they want to be treated?
Yes! Yeah, okay. Treat everybody the way... Communicate with everyone. Treat everyone the way that they want to be treated.
Right.
That's the platinum rule of communication. Mm-hmm. So that's my share.
I love that. I love it. Moving on, because I could talk about lack of communication for 7,000 hours. Yeah. Negotiation skills. The second thing was, and I actually took a pause at this because I was like, well, what does that mean? Because that can mean a lot of things. The second thing that came up when we were doing our research was poor negotiation skills. Mm-hmm. So, meaning the agent is difficult to reach is kind of some of the notes we have here. Communication's vague. They don't give enough attention. When I think poor negotiation, I think they're not asking enough questions to the other side. Yeah. Too often I feel agents, especially listing agents, you'll get an offer and you just say, this is it. And if it doesn't work for the client, you're not having a conversation with the agent that presented the offer of, can we work on this? Is this extremely important to them? If we're going to counter at this X, Y, and Z, what is super important to your client? You have to be able to communicate with the other agent on the other side with your fiduciary in mind.
Yeah, but how do you know what's important to somebody unless you ask them?
Right.
Like, I would argue that poor negotiation starts from the part that we're like, agents insert themselves, and we're all guilty of it, but you insert yourself into just assuming a 30-day close for the most money possible with an appraisal addendum is like the perfect offer. Why wouldn't they take it? But it could be another term, like this was an important thing in real estate in the last 2-ish years, but the term highest and best is outdated because we all learned in the COVID market, the highest offer weren't always the ones accepted. There are other terms of a contract that might be appealing. So unless you really know your client, how can you negotiate for them to know their priorities?
Right.
Because like all it takes is one little thing from that other agent for you to know, oh man, they're totally willing to be reasonable when it comes to the date.
Right.
Whatever it is.
I think something we forgot to mention, and this is both poor communication and will bleed into lack of negotiation skills, is agents are scared. Like they're actually scared to ask the right question. And I'm not trying to shame anyone because normal Rebecca will be like, idiot, but I really don't mean that. That's my competitive nature when I'm an agent. But as someone that's trying to help bridge the gap for other people and other agents right now, I think that something that we learned early on is a concept and a book called Radical Candor. And if you take a look at that just for 5 seconds after this podcast, take a look at what that means and the concept of it specific to that book, you will learn that if you are not giving 100% truth, like we've all gotten feedback on a listing, right? That's like bad, like it smells really bad and like there's a ceiling or there's a hole in the ceiling and it's embarrassing. You don't want to go tell your client that. I'm telling you this as black and white as I can. If you do not tell them painfully honest truth, you are doing them a disservice. You are going to hurt them and yourself. And a lot of agents are afraid to do that. And I get it. It's not fun, but your job's not always supposed to be fun. It's fun at the end when you get to closing.
And I guess my point to add to that is like, you're not going to be able to flavor the news that you have to give, that there's information to deliver, but your communication style is yours. You can decide to wait 5 hours and, I'm sorry, because I've been guilty of it too, but if you want to like be a lazy ass and just lie around for 5 hours and wallow in the, oh, I just really don't want to pick up this phone call, like you're just delaying the inevitable.
Yep.
You could at least spend those 5 hours to, I don't know, run through a script, call a coach, call a friend, truly use whatever time you need before you have to make a phone call. And I challenge you to make that time shorter and shorter every time.
But get it done. Rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah, but my point is, if you're like me, because honestly, you mentioned earlier, people, the number one reason that agents don't make the calls because they don't know what to say. You are right, but I would also say that there is some hesitation to, once you know what it looks like to be right, like there's like a fear.
Yeah.
To make sure that it's delivered that way.
Right.
Like there's an anxiety to even just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So my point is, if you have to take a minute, don't let it be 5 hours. That was crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
But if you need to take 15 minutes, an hour, whatever
For sure.
you can give, take the hour, but make it worth the other person's time that you took it.
100%.
So selfish otherwise.
100%. And I never looked at it that way until we flipped the narrative on that, and that's why I bring up radical candor, because it is selfish. Like, it's not cool to do that to your client. They hired you for a reason. If they get upset, because we've had people get upset, like, oh, my house isn't nice. Hey,
it's upsetting information.
Absolutely. And your job is to say, hey, I totally understand that this doesn't feel good to you right now. My job is to tell you the 100% truth of what I'm hearing so we can fix what we can.
And offer solutions.
There you go.
Totally.
Yeah, and if I don't do that, I'm not doing my job. I beg of you to say that to them if you ever get that.
Here's my beef with negotiations. To get back to poor negotiation. Again, I'm somebody who I like to have a lot of information before I make a choice. Honestly, it doesn't normally work out that way because I'm also impatient, but I really do try to get a lot of information. That's what makes me feel most comfortable. So when I first got in the business, I found it really difficult to negotiate on repairs because I didn't know how to read an inspection report. And by that I mean I didn't know...
It's still going, right?
Yeah, it is. I didn't feel confident in knowing what was an actual big problem and what wasn't. Number one, all I had to do was ask, right? I don't think enough agents are willing to wear
Call the inspector.
That's my point. They're not willing to wear the dummy hat and call the inspector and be
am.
like, do you have time? Can I take you to coffee? Do you have 15 minutes on the phone right now to help a brother out?
Hey, homie, what does this leaking thing mean?
What is a roof?
I see a black hole.
I've been so dumb. I've been so dumb. And we've all, honestly, even if just in your personal life, made the mistake of pretending to know something. And then you're like, oh, I love football.
I fucked up.
And then what did I do recently? Oh my god, I called Dak.
Dak Prescott, what'd you call him?
Dak Shepard.
Yo, just for a disclaimer, I'm a big Cowboys fan. She should know it's Dak Prescott. I don't know where Dak Shepard came from. I don't even know who that is.
He's, what?
No.
That's Kristen Bell's husband.
I don't know who Kristen
That's
Bell
how I'm
is.
going to introduce him from now on. He's a comedian and an actor and he's a podcaster, but he's Kristen Bell's husband.
I don't even know who she is. Shout out to Kristen Bell. Yeah, I don't know famous people like
That's
that.
okay. You do know her, but
unless
anyway.
it's the Jersey Shore cast.
Poor
Sorry.
negotiations.
So
So if you don't feel comfortable with the material, then you gotta own that. You need to run at whatever is making you nervous. For me, it's not talking to people, like we've talked about. So maybe I enjoy learning that communication style of negotiation more, and I hated learning anything about structures. But that was what I needed to run at.
yeah, for sure. Our last topic, because we are getting ready to wrap up here, is the number one reason people dislike / fire their agent. Lack or really poor advice. They're not giving good advice. And again, you have to be okay with, and now there is a certain threshold to this, right? Because I would like to think you need to be the expert. You need to know everything, but you can't know everything. So if your client asks you, is this pipe leaking, or is this...
Can you guarantee me
Right.
that this is going to
But
be
is
okay?
this a big deal?
Yeah.
It's okay to say, I don't know, let me consult a professional who does, especially if it's not within your scope. You need to be able to ask a tax person, how often do you get the question, do I need to pay anything in taxes on this?
What's capital gains tax?
Right, I can give you a roundabout answer, but this is not professional advice, and I want to connect you with someone very specific for your situation, not only because you stay in your scope, but also because if you give the wrong advice, you're gonna hate yourself and they're gonna hate you. So I steer clear of all of those things, and I'm really glad that we talked about this, because the biggest way to not give bad advice and to kind of make sure that you have everything, on lock in that way, is to have a solid system, really.
Yeah.
So, oh my god, that's so distracting.
What?
Alexa just dropped off. I mean,
Alexa.
Amazon package just got dropped off. Having a solid process that's replicable. Meaning, like, our template.
I don't have an answer for that.
You bitch. Shut up. I hate when she does that.
Wait, come back.
Poor advice.
Keep that off again.
Key parts of the process. Explaining key parts of the process and giving bad advice. I wrote templates in here, but that has nothing to do with it. Because the truth is, bad advice comes from not knowing what you're doing and wanting to give advice when you shouldn't because you don't want to look stupid. I am the queen of not wanting to look stupid, and I very often will go with things and make things up on the spot, but not when it's about something specific that's out of my scope or about numbers or anything like that. It's more so like, yeah, I've been to Alabama before, things like that. Yeah, go dogs. Oh wait, that's Georgia. I'm making myself look so bad today. But things like that.
Yeah. For me, when it comes to bad advice, it's a line that we walk, because I always come back to the fiduciary of what we do, because whatever, that's my compass. But like, we are in 2019, I think, the National Association of Realtors changed the definition of a realtor from a salesperson to a counselor. And that shit sits heavy on me because that's so real.
It is.
Because like, if you're approaching real estate as a salesperson, then your advice is selfish. I'm gonna repeat that. If you're like, you're being selfish because you're approaching this as a sale.
Sidebar, I listened to a podcast this morning and the girl on the show was talking shit about her realtor, and she said out loud, and I quote, well, yeah, he told me to take out a personal loan for my $5,000 closing costs. I almost threw up for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Not only are you asking that person to go into debt, who the hell are you to give them financial advice?
Also, like, yeah, just asking yourself the question, is that the best decision for that person?
Right.
And frankly, your business in the long run, yeah, that's tough.
That's
a rough
terrible.
one.
Yeah.
So if you're approaching real estate like as a salesperson, then you're not even doing it the way that the association says, because as a counselor, it's not always about the advice that you give. Sometimes it's about, like, as in, you should do ABC. Sometimes it's the advice of, you know, hey, Rebecca, when we first met, you told me it was really important that we got this wrapped up by Christmas.
Right.
And you wanted to be in Florida by then. And this offer is going to make that possible for you. And if you don't take this offer, we're going to run the same play. We're going to get you on track, but I can't promise you that it's going to be by Christmas.
Right.
Is that okay with you?
No, I need to be out by Christmas.
So maybe that was the best advice I'll ever give that client.
There you
It's
go.
kind of my point, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is so much more than just learning where they went to high school so that you can put it in your database and put it in your follow-up. It's like, it probably is going to bleed into you understanding what's important to them.
And
so
I
you can
used
give
to
good advice.
I used to think those questions were so stupid, and I'm stupid because the truth is, when you ask them those questions and you look at them and say, you told me this, is this really gonna align with that when I give you X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
They're gonna think about it and they're gonna be like, shit, I did tell you that. That is my goal, because they're getting all this information in front of them and they're not able to make the decision that they first hired you for because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's so important.
And things change. Like, that's the other thing in terms of giving good advice. Like, hey, Rebecca, same scenario. Is that still important to you? No, Catherine. If I can't get like at least ABC number, if I can't get at least $250,000 for my house, then fuck Christmas in Florida. Like,
Yeah.
we gotta make this work. Like,
And honestly, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, back up. We did not
need to
talk fully.
Yeah,
about what our
that's
goals
my
were.
point. But also, like, things change. Like, you changed in your transaction. Your vendor, that lender, like, didn't change with you. Like,
Right.
didn't pick up on that.
Right.
So, you know, giving good advice is from start to finish. Like, that whole thing is communication, obviously. But
Yeah. We got to wrap up, but to avoid firing your real estate agent, or agents to avoid being fired, interview multiple people. Interview multiple agents. The most successful listing appointments I've had, I've been interviewed and they have told me, we're interviewing you. And I always remind them that's very smart, because even if I know I'm the best at my job, I'm not for everybody.
Yeah.
I would like to think I am, and I would beg to differ, but the truth is I can't be for everybody.
yeah.
So I just think it's really important to check out the agent's profile, their reviews, their Google reviews, all of those good things.
But approach it like an interview.
Yeah, because it is.
Come with your questions, or like, you know, come with the questions that you can. I know it's hard because the response that a consumer is going to have right now is, you don't know what you don't know until
Right.
you know it. Stick around. We'll teach you all the questions you want to know.
And that's why it's on us, but this is not a solicitation.
This is not a solicitation.
Peace out.